Officer James woke up too early, again, on another chilly spring morning. His neck ached and his eyeballs throbbed in their sockets. He knew the phone calls would start soon. Then it would be another confusing, stressful, 8 cups of coffee and handfuls of ibuprofen kind of day. The news continued its reports on the wild stories. The CDC reports of numerous people falling into painful tremors, losing fingernails. The number of missing persons had hit an eerie high. Conspiracies spread, and now the same reports were coming out of the local county. His county. Last night there were 10 calls about spouses or children waking up delirious, a few dozen more calls about people who had gone missing, and the clinics had an influx of patients. James hazily stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror and wondered if he could skip shaving. The morning phone calls began. A good Samaritan had let a vagrant take their guest room for the night, but the host had become wary of his odd guest and dialed the police. The stranger seemed far too happy and carefree, and had started rambling about things like how buttered toast tastes like shades of burnt orange and asking how the host thought of that wonderful color. By the time James arrived at the station, he found the vagrant in the side office, handcuffed and gagged. He had weird straw-colored hair and drab clothes. The new deputy said he wouldn't shut up, and the cuffs were just because he wanted to cuff the weird prick. The stranger had no ID and no cell phone, only a large worn duffel bag. James chastised his junior officer and asked him to take the gag off. When the gag was removed, the stranger gave a polite cough and folded his hands. James's mind went back to his father's time in law enforcement, how they would drive a vagrant like this out on the edge of town or past the county line. James took a sip of his coffee, but nearly coughed it up. It had an unexpected bitter note. The vagrant looked at him in sympathy. James decided he would take care of this personally. He didn't want the drama of keeping the stranger present, and asked the deputy to put him in the back of the squad car. They hit the old highway at 7:55. James passed that last mile marker and began to slow the squad car down. The crunching of gravel whispered under the vehicle's black tires as he pulled off the shoulder. The dutiful officer shut off the engine and cracked his stiff neck. He looked into the rearview mirror, looked at the man he was going to turn out. "You're free to go. Just don't walk back into the town." James shut his mouth. He noticed the vagrant's eyes locked on his own. The engine popped as it was cooling. The stranger breathed deeply in and out. And there on that chilly stretch of the highway, the world of Officer James and the vagrant became like a quilted, narrow tunnel. The wind shuffling through the trees sounded muffled and tinny. James turned and leaned more on the driver's door. He breathed heavily, knowing something uncanny was about to happen. He prepared himself like one prepares for a crashing wave. Then, in their narrow tunnel, the two men began a dialogue without words, only exchanged as thoughts. A scratched-up morning cigar crate used for a nightstand and filled with old books. A gooseneck lamp, fire engine red, with a dented base. An old record player. 3 worn vinyl records. A wallet with a few dollars and a folded-up picture of a man who isn't you, and the clothes off your back.
This is all that I have now. This is more than I could ever need.
You're one of those people the news won't stop talking about. The ones who claim to change.
Yes, and you know now it's not a claim. It's true.
When?
2 years now since it started. I've been traveling since then, just hopping around, help out when I can, find a good place to stay.
Don't you feel betrayed? Wronged?
I did at first. I was like so many others. I never imagined that such a curious decision would cause me to lose everything I held dear. Everything I was or could have been. None of us knew how much we would suffer. It was only an object, an orb, glowing gently within a dream, and it was only a touch. The luminous orb, always appearing there, floating in your own personal dream world. It would beckon you, calling you to reach out and touch it. So when I had the dream, I reached out and I touched my fate. I held it in my hands and found what so many others had professed to be true. Those who hold the orb feel something, a realization, an awareness, a connection. Then I knew it was all true. But then again, how could I know what it would mean? How could any of us? And the permanent price we would pay. It was a type of hell we had to go through once we chose the orb. But I assure you now, it feels like a lifetime ago.
The pain? You can remember?
The pain, my God. Yes. It was the body changing right down to the very molecule. Your DNA being split apart and rewritten little by little for years on end.
Your neck.
I remember the first place the pain started, right at the base of my neck, but slightly to the left. It started as a dull pain, but then it grew over time, and it would slide up to what felt like behind your eyeball. It would feel like thumbtacks sewed into your muscle fibers. I tried to endure, but it got worse. The doctor's offices and medical practices became familiar places. They could do nothing for someone like me. No one could. No one knew what was happening to us. Some doctors turned me away. Others just gave me pills. Pills that didn't do anything, or that make you slow or stupid or forgetful or sick.
The pain, it began to be the only thing you felt.
Maybe not the only thing, but it was the one thing that I could feel the best.
The nights.
I can still remember the nights of sweat and agony, and clenched jaws and fists. Then there was the screaming. I remember waking up my parents with my shrieking. They would stumble into my room, scared out of their minds. I realize now how hard it must have been for them to see me writhing in the bed. My body in a violent flux of transformation, fingers trembling into different lengths, ribs groaning and settling into new shapes. On top of the pain was a constant crippling fear. All the questions that had no answers. What did this all mean? Where was this going? Would I die? Would the pain last forever? Would I be alone? I was afraid of being alone because my friends and loved ones. I wasn't theirs anymore. It was an unbearable experience to be in pain all day, every day. But they seemed to find it more unbearable to be around it. I retreated. My room became my cell during the day. My job lost, my funds dried up. At night I would venture out after I was no longer the only one in the house. I'd buy strong drinks and walk by rivers and train tracks as my body rewrote itself. I did it because everyone feared me, and no one was strong enough to be burdened by the company of a man who was in agony and whose flesh was turning into bad quilt work.
And then?
And then it continued, day in and day out, until one day you look in the mirror and you don't look like yourself. You're beginning to look an awful lot like someone else.
Because you're someone else now. It's not just your body that changes.
Right. My brain was being rewired bit by bit. I noticed it by the little things at first, like my taste in food.
You're thinking about Reese's peanut butter cups.
I used to love them. But the day came when I found them too sweet and heavy. I couldn't enjoy them. Anything with peanut butter mixed with chocolate, really. It was so odd, partaking in something you love, you knew you loved, but you didn't. Or you'd try on one of your favorite shirts, or watch your favorite movie, and find it so unsatisfying. Your memories leave you in the same way. After you changed, the old you became someone else whose life you dreamed. Having to sit through it all was a mess. It felt like I was cracking. It wasn't memory loss, it was more like memory displacement. I was remembering things vividly that happened to someone else. He played soccer. He used to have a German Shepherd named Brownie. Even as I came to terms with the fact that I was no longer the individual he was, it still broke my heart to slowly lose the stories and images of someone. I cared for him. I felt pity for that man, that every aspect is slowly being forgotten.
But you found something in these transformations.
The orb gives people something mystical. It opened up a world far beyond the sum of its parts. In the years where my pain was at its crux, I first started to notice it. Out on drunken or sleepless nights, I would catch lucid moments, both shocking and ecstatic. Through my pain, I could see it. Rain-slicked roads looked like pools of rainbow sherbet. Street lamps, like distant blue suns emitting rays that burned golden hot. I could taste the wind, and I could hear the concrete. I think those moments kept me going.
Why? How?
I don't know. A twisted sense of humor? Curiosity? The best answer may be just because it seemed to be promising something more than what I knew or imagined.
And the orb, or whoever sent it. Why are they doing all this?
I know it wasn't meant to hurt us. I don't think the discomfort was by design. Maybe there is something about us, our bodies, our minds. Maybe we're the ones who give pain to all the changes. Maybe it's the only way to move on. I've moved from one life to another, and I have the new face to show it. If there's one great change in life, it's to die. The orb just gave us that big one. Free, complete, and unsaturated. And I think having to alter us like how they did was the only way we could connect to something bigger. Because it's all changing, man.
The two men looked at each other, sitting still in the car, still parked on the side of the highway. Their silent dialogue had stopped. Officer James let the man out of the back of the squad car. The vagrant he was ordered to deal with was no threat, had done nothing dangerous, said nothing dangerous. The vagrant was just one of them, the ones who could change, the ones who the orbs had found. James nodded at the stranger and stooped his neck to look at his own shuddering hands. He saw that his fingernails were a color he hadn't known he could see, because Officer James was changing. The stranger picked up his pack and began walking down the West Highway. He waved goodbye to James in a reassuring manner. James sighed and nodded his head. As he did so, he felt something like tiny beads in his neck popping. The tree line from along the highway flickered from a normal green to a new tone tinged with teal, because everything was changing. And it would change again.